Good evening and welcome to the August 27th, 2025 Board of Douglas County Commissioners 5:30 business meeting. Paper copies of the agenda are available for those here in person, and a full packet is available on our website. Reviewing the agenda, first we'll consider our consent agenda. There are 3 items on that agenda. After our consent agenda, we'll have general public comment. We welcome general public comment for addressing issues not on today's agenda, but otherwise related to county business. Given our limited time and the need to have orderly and efficient meetings, we apply certain rules regarding public comments. We'll do our best to enforce these rules consistently and without regard to the point of view expressed by the speaker. Here are the rules. 1, each speaker will be limited to a total of 3 minutes of speaking time. However, we will accept public comment of any length in writing. 2, individual speakers may not donate unused time to other speakers. 3, all comments must address topics within the jurisdiction of the County Commission. And 4, we reserve the right to mute or remove any speaker whose comments are threatening, aggressively hostile, or belligerent. Campaigning for public office during public comment period is not allowed. Please give your full name and address for our meeting minutes and address your comments to the Commission. Please know that comments received by the Commission during our meetings do not necessarily represent the values of the Douglas County government, but we value the input. We don't usually respond to the general public comments on the spot, but if you'll leave your contact information with county staff, we'll try and get your specific question answered. After that, we'll move to our regular agenda, and there are 4 items on our regular agenda. First, we'll open a hearing for the revenue neutral rate for Douglas County, and then after that, we'll close the public hearing and open up for a staff presentation and public hearing for the operating and CIP budget. After that item, we'll do a revenue neutral rate hearing for Consolidated Fire District number 1. After that, we'll close that hearing and do a budget hearing for the budget for Consolidated Fire District number 1. For each action item, we'll hear from staff and the applicant, followed by questions from the Commission, and then open it up for public comment on that relevant item. Once public comment is closed, we'll bring the item back to the Commission for further discussion and a vote. Lastly, a recording of this meeting will be available on the county's YouTube page and website. With that, Commissioners, we'll move to our consent agenda. Would any Commissioner like to remove an item for the consent agenda for further discussion or question? Seeing none, any member of the public like to have an item removed from our consent agenda for further discussion? Anyone online, Sarah? Seeing none, Commissioners, I'd welcome and motion on our consent agenda.
Commissioner Reed, move to approve 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. We'll move to general public comment now. If you have general public comment on any item that is not on our agenda, and I read those agenda items earlier, now would be the time. Hi, John.
Green light. It's been a while. John M. 66049. The 2026 budget supports over 40 community partners providing mental health and substance abuse services totaling $12.5 million.
John, I'm just going to pause you here. We'll hold your time here. We do have public comment on the budget. This is separate from it.
This isn't quite on the budget, so
okay.
I'm going to go off topic in a minute.
Thank you.
Just setting the context, if you can start my time again. There's substantial supplemental funding for partners who lost federal funding. How do we evaluate the success of this spending? The Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, is showing May, June, and July increases in homelessness from 582, 595 to 632. We are not and have not been heading to functional zero. And yes, I know of the one night in January where we counted fewer homeless on the street. The date for reaching functional zero keeps changing. It was 2023. Now it's 2028. The federal government cut its budget and county taxpayers are funding more. Citizens want accountability for the budget and for results. How many homeless have a status of unable to locate, UTL? How many UTL become inactive? How many individuals transitioned to shelter, exited from shelter, and returned to street homelessness? What wraparound services have homeless populations been engaged with? Substance use, abuse, justice, reentry, mental health. Homeless families are all different groups. How successful have these services been? An incomplete picture of the groups experiencing homelessness in Douglas County is a barrier to implementing effective interventions and measuring success. To justify the increase in public spending, we need to change how we deliver, measure, and report homeless services to the groups that require it. Continued and increased collaboration across providers is needed. A consistent and measurable way for providers to deliver service management is needed. Consistent treatment delivery for groups suffering from similar challenges is required. All providers must communicate and collaborate to discuss similar groups receiving assistance. Data should be released to the public describing successes and failures for these programs. We challenge all citizens to demand the data for yourselves. Whatever your position on homelessness, hold the county and city government accountable for how it spends your money. Thank you.
Green, Patrick. Any other general public comment? And Brent, as you come forward, I'm just checking in that this isn't on the
It's
budget.
not on the budget.
Thank
It's
you.
on the 24 financial statements. I'm Brent Bovee. When will these be provided publicly? When will these be reviewed by the Board of County Commissioners? You released the 23 financials last year in mid-August. Why did you delay the release and review this summer? And why didn't you provide the 24 audited financial statements before tonight's budget hearing? You consistently tout your transparency and your openness. You're anything but that. Delaying the release of the 24 financial statements is intentional and deliberate. No wonder your credibility is so low. What are you trying to hide from us?
Any other general public comments here at the commission? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay, we'll close public comment and move to our regular agenda. And our first item is hearing to exceed the revenue neutral rate for Douglas County and cemetery districts within the 2026 county budget.
Commissioners, if I could kick this off before I turn it over to Brooke Sauer, our finance manager, I'd like to. It's my honor and privilege to present this 2026 capital and operating budget to the Douglas County Commission and our community. That is our first budget developed under an expanded commission. Work started on this budget in early March. Over 40 community partners, we met with over 40 community partners, 5 countywide elected officials, a district court, 12 departments, and a joint governance arrangement with the City of Lawrence for Lawrence Douglas County Fire Medical to develop this budget. I'd like to thank them for their engagement and involvement in that process and for their presence here tonight. There were over 20 hours of public meetings in this room on this budget. The County Commission reviewed every line item in the 2024 actuals, the current budget, and every line item was re-estimated inside the current year. And then an annual budget was set for 2026. There were 744 pages in our budget document that Commissioner Dorsey has in front of him right there. I was going to bring mine out, but and that's 33 pages less than the year before. So we're a little proud of getting a little more efficient. This budget is our strategic plan and our guiding document. You pay for what's important to you. There's so many people to thank for their contributions to this process that brought us here tonight, but I would be remiss if I didn't thank Brooke Sauer, our finance manager. Brooke, your leadership and vision improves this organization every day. And I'd like to thank Jake Broadbent, our assistant to the county administrator. His work ethic and dedication have been remarkable this year, and we're really lucky to have him. I also want to thank the County Commission for their dedication, investment of their time, and their public service to the community. And I'll turn it over to Brooke.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, Commissioners. Staff will start off with a presentation for each of the two hearings that we'll be conducting tonight. I'm going to start with the Douglas County budget, and then like Commissioner Kelly said, leading off the meeting, we'll move into the Consolidated Fire District Number 1 budget. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick off the presentation and we'll talk about what we've done, where we've been, and where we're headed tonight. So as Sarah said, between July 7th and 16th, commissioners listened to and deliberated over this budget. They heard from a number of community partners and county departments and considered more than 60 funding requests totaling $12.9 million. These sessions were widely focused on reviewing those supplemental requests and aligning those requests with county priorities. As a result of those discussions in July, the proposed budget before you tonight includes approximately $184 million in budget authority for fiscal year 2026 for those budgeted funds. I want to caveat those totals listed on the certificate page. They do not include non-appropriated values that are allocated in each levied fund, nor does it include the Workmen's Compensation Fund, which is not budgeted, but we do consider that an operating fund. We do pay claims out of that fund. The Register of Deeds Technology Fund and the Ambulance Capital Reserve Fund, which supports the purchase of big capital for our partners at LDCFM. Including the non-appropriated plus the additional funds that I just went over that they're not budgeted, but we consider them to be somewhat operational. The budget totals $202.6 million. Commissioners, I wanted to detail for you on this slide the mill levy reduction of 0.629 mills for a total mill levy of 40.669 in 2026. The table on this slide details the difference between the estimated mill levy from the recommended budget to the mill levy that's detailed in the adopted budget forms that are before you tonight, and we'll certify and send to the state later this fall once we get the final total assessed values. So I just want to remind commissioners that if the final total assessed value increases, the mill levy will decrease when we set levies in November. The values that we work with in July to set our budget are estimated values. And at that time, hearings are still being taken, or they're still taking place, and those values can change. I do also want to point out here that we have a mill levy reduction in the general fund. But I also want to note that we have a mill levy increase in the Road and Bridge Fund. This is from the $500,000 in additional contractual for road pavement maintenance contracts. And then also the Employee Benefits Fund shows an additional increase, and this is for those positions that we added. Staff went in and calculated the fringe benefits on those and put those values in the Employee Benefits Fund. Commissioners, on this slide, I want to just call out that I've updated these slides from what was in your agenda packet. The general fund revenue budget, along with the 2027 fund balances, they were updated to reflect the budget before you tonight. Staff inadvertently put the recommended budget values on here when I originally submitted this presentation, so I apologize for that. Staff would like to highlight on this slide that we are reducing our fund balances for those levied funds going into 2027. I also want to note here that there were a few adjustments made to the Special Parks and Recreation Fund and the Motor Vehicle Operations Fund to account for a fund balance discrepancy we had in the recommended budget that was before you. Was the budgeted fund balance, not the actual fund balance. So we had to make a couple of adjustments there. So I just wanted to call that out here. Also included, I'm sorry, I want to talk a little bit about the behavioral health fund balance here. This slide is very small, but we are looking to go into 2027 with a 66.1% fund balance. And commissioners discussed this behavioral health fund balance during our budget deliberations and directed staff to maintain that fund balance to create maximum flexibility in this fund. And staff looks to exempt that fund from the fund balance policy moving forward. We'll follow up with commissioners later this fall with some strategies about how to do that and a policy restatement before you in the coming months. I think it's also important to note, specifically for this fund, it is a little bit different because we're running both operational costs and capital expenses from the same fund, which is kind of unique. And this is for both the Treatment Recovery Center and the Transitional Housing Campus. Staff also included in your packet tonight an updated version of just the facilities portion of the CIP. Nothing changed for Road and Bridge, so I didn't include that. But I did want to specifically call out that document because during our July 31st work session for the CIP, commissioners signaled to staff that there was no longer a desire to make allocations to the 1242 Massachusetts Street project. Staff was able to effectively reallocate that $1.3 million towards that project to the phase 2 finish out of the public safety building. But that wasn't all. The delta on that project was $2.7 million and I only had 1.3. So I made some adjustments to the contingency balances in the CIP to fully fund that project in 2026. Otherwise, we'd have to wait until 2027. And I don't think we'd be able to do that considering the timeline before us. So staff is confident that that will be an okay move. Also, I just want to put a plug in here that I will probably eventually consolidate that public safety building project into the JLEC master plan and revision project for next year. So when staff brings that CIP, that public safety building project will likely disappear, but I will put the budget for that into the guaranteed maximum price on that other project. And staff is tracking expenditures for both of those construction sites separately. Same project, different locations, different buildings. So we'll be able to tell how much each of those project costs are separately. And commissioners, I wanted to detail for you everything that is included in the commissioner's contingency line. In this slide, you'll see that additional operational support was added for LDCFM, eviction resolution, truancy, permanent supportive housing programs, and case management services. The extension council value is added to offset in addition to the budget that was discovered after the proposed budget was presented. So I just wanted to throw it in here because it does balance to the line item in the adopted budget. And for the Behavioral Health Fund, commissioners, we added new ongoing expenses in the Behavioral Health Fund totaling $1.3 million. This funding will be new and ongoing in that fund. And then we added one-time expenses totaling $1.73 million for 2026. Commissioner, this concludes the staff presentation for the Douglas County and Special District portion of the first hearing that we're going to hold tonight. Commissioner Kelly, you have a sheet in front of you that details exactly the order in which we'll open the hearing, receive public comment, and then motion and close hearing. So staff is going to stop sharing my screen and
Brooke,
yes.
before you stop sharing, could you go back one page?
Mhm. Absolutely.
And I should note here, what we've earmarked, this matches the contingency funds that commissioners set aside in the behavioral health fund budget. So, and whether or not we think they will possibly be ongoing or one time. So some of these, we don't really have a funding contingency line in the behavioral health projects budget. We probably should. We'll probably look to add one, but that's outlining where those funds are.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Sarah. Commissioners, any other questions before we open the public hearing?
I think just a comment about the contingency items and just that to flag for the public, those are items that we budgeted and yet still have some community conversations to be had about how exactly those will be allocated and if that entire amount will be needed. So just stay tuned. Those are all public conversations that will happen probably this fall.
Thanks, Commissioner Willie. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll open the public hearing on the revenue neutral rate for Douglas County. And with that, we'll take public comment. If you'd like to provide public comment on this item, we ask that you come forward and do so now. Okay, we'll close. Got to be quick.
John M. 66049. I'm not sure I appreciated all of the commentary that was just made. There's some changes in the budget that I don't know if I understood. So I'm going to go ahead and say some words that I formed in looking at the budget. You know, I was here during all of the discussions with the partners. Many of them, if not all of them, had lost federal funding. And it was my observation that the commissioners wanted to maintain the partners in doing what they do, which is understandable and fine. But to me, there's a deficit because the Fed stopped paying. And that means we, the taxpayer, have to make up the difference, which to me challenges the overall expenditure of the county and consequently puts us citizens at risk of having increased taxes. So I want to put forward that perhaps it's time, and I've mentioned this before, that cuts be introduced across the board and some judicious slicing of the budgets of various items so that either none of the money that the Fed was previously providing is asked to be made up by the taxpayer or some of it at least. I didn't see a lot of cuts in the budget. I do want to put forth that, you know, fire and police and street maintenance are important, so I'm not urging cuts there, but there are other places where cuts could be made. There are other, I heard some of the comment about contingency funds being cut, but we're still getting an increase in taxes, so some more serious looks at that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Lori McSorley, 66049. I want to thank you for your dedication to the 40+ community partners who work tirelessly to invest in our community. We community partners exert ourselves to tackle complicated issues that affect our community in so many ways. We tackle complicated issues like mental health, food insecurity, access to health care, and employment, to name a few. I hope that our community understands the difficulty that is wrapped in your decisions and appreciates your dedication and commitment to those who are less fortunate in our community and those who may not have the privilege that most of us hold in this room. I'll speak for Van Gogh, community partners, and many citizens by saying thank you for the care and compassion that you take when making these difficult decisions.
Any other public comments on the revenue neutral rate? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay, we'll close that public, we don't close that public hearing.
Thank you. It's a weird order.
Yes, the weird order. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, we have a motion, but I'm happy to make the motion if you like. I'll just say I appreciate the public comments and I appreciate the space we have to talk about our budget and different values on this. I'll get more specific when it comes to actually the budget, but this item is about the revenue neutral rate. I think it is a reality that costs continue to go up, and much of that is outside of our control. And while I feel like it would be nice to just say every year we need to have the same number, to me, that doesn't provide the services, the infrastructure that our community asks for. So for example, if we were to give any of our Douglas County staff a raise at any time, we would actually have to cut programs every year in order to do that. I disagree with one of the public comments that we didn't consider cuts. He did mention that there were some cuts that were considered, and I'm not a fan of just cutting to cut. I want to really listen carefully to what all the different departments of Douglas County and the community partners bring to us, to understand what services they're providing. I trust that they and some of our community partners did this year look to where they could reduce their budgets. And I was grateful for that and expect that from them. So I appreciate the public comments and I'm satisfied with exceeding the revenue neutral rate.
I have some minority comments, if I could address those at this time. We continue to have a problem with the elderly living in homes that they've paid for, but they still have to pay $300 or $400 a month in property tax and insurance. They can't afford to move because there's no place available that they can afford to move to, and maintenance on their existing homes is difficult to maintain, along with medical costs and a lot of other things. So I'm taking exception to exceeding the revenue neutral rate. I think we've underestimated some of our other incomes. Sales tax, we did not include any additional income in 2026 for the World Cup activities that'll be going on in the county. And secondly, the University of Kansas has a new conference center. They estimate that will bring in an extra $348,000 in the first year in sales tax to the county. Secondly, I suspect, as we have in the last few years, have an underspend on our expenses this year. We certainly had one in 2024. I think some of those funds could be utilized to offset any revenue that would come by maintaining revenue neutral. And finally, we set our property tax delinquency rate at 2%. If you look historically over the last 3 years, it's been about 1%. So I think the combination of all of those would allow us to maintain our revenue neutral rate. Thanks.
I have a question for you, Commissioner Dorsey. So are you saying that you think all of the revenues that you project, not what the staff had told you, think what staff projections are incorrect? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying they are conservative.
They're conservative. And so your belief is that, am I reading, you said you had a minority opinion on this. Am I understanding that you're planning to vote against the revenue neutral rate?
Yes. Exceeding the revenue neutral rate.
Seems like that might have been more helpful math within the 20 hours when we were discussing the budget line by line to figure out how your math works into that. Last year, I think we were very close to revenue neutral. This year, we weren't working with that same math. That just wasn't the reality we had. So I appreciate that we stay, that our revenue estimates are conservative because we pay our bills. And that is not the case with every organization or every government organization. We stay solvent. We keep our promises. That means a lot to me. We could certainly go the other way and take guesses on what maybe we do, maybe we don't get, a base camp for the World Cup. Maybe that does or doesn't, increase revenue for that, but it would be, far enough in the future that I'm more comfortable doing that as a re-estimate halfway through the year than taking kind of wild guesses outside of what the staff brings to us.
This is Commissioner Reed. I'll just share that, I appreciate you sharing your perspective and opinion. What I think about revenue, well, the things I want to say about revenue neutral rate is it's a concept with rules and procedures that was developed in less than 5 years ago from the state legislature to, in my opinion, create a lot of additional administrative work, pomp and circumstance around identifying a rate at which I think gives a false sense of understanding about how our taxing system works. So all revenue neutral means is that the taxing entity is going to bring in $1 more than they did last year. That's all that it means. And I think that generally speaking, every government organization, every business, and even every nonprofit, all of whom are functioning with different rules and structures around governance and budget and financing, expect to or hope to bring in $1 more than they did the previous year in order to grow revenues. So I have always really struggled with people's focus on this revenue neutral rate as a benchmark, as a goal to try and hit, because it's not a full picture, I think, about everything that goes into taxing rates. And while I hear the points that you've made, Commissioner Dorsey, about some things you disagree with staff's recommendation on and maybe other commissioners' views on, I think that those types of discussions, to Commissioner Willie's point, can and should be had during our budget hearings and proceedings. And, I think that there's some ripe potential to reevaluate some of the approaches and ways in which we calculate those things year after year, but focusing it all on the exceeding the revenue neutral rate, at almost every single taxing authority on your tax bill is exceeding the revenue neutral rate, because generally speaking, unless there's an economic crisis and financial crash that everybody is navigating, generally speaking, every organization is bringing in $1 or more than they did last year, which is what this vote is about.
Our delinquency rate, we had previously calculated that at 2.5%, and this was a kind of a reevaluation to say we put that back to 2%. So that is one of the places where we thought that staff and commissioners agreed that we'd been too conservative in our income estimates for that. So that was already a readjustment to kind of address that.
Correct.
Commissioner Dorsey, I appreciate your points. I do think it begins to set a precedent in how we deliberate on our budget to go through 20 hours, not that you didn't ask questions about them, but at the point when we take a vote, one could argue that some political gamesmanship could be happening here.
I'm not complaining about the budget. I'm complaining about the funding of the budget.
Yes, and we did cover revenues on the first day, did we not? Yeah, we covered revenues, and that would have been the time for us to discuss that, for you to make clear that you disagreed or that you weren't in support of the revenue estimates. And so while I understand your points, I'm disappointed as a body that we're having this discussion at this point. I think we should have had it earlier. So there's that. I move to approve the resolution number 2531, expressing the intent to levy a property tax exceeding the revenue neutral rate for Douglas County.
Second.
Well, Sarah, will you call the roll,
Yeah.
please?
Commissioners, this requires a roll call vote, so I'll call the roll. Commissioner Kelly, Chair.
Yes?
Commissioner Reed, Vice Chair.
Yes.
Commissioner Willie.
Yes.
Commissioner Dorsey.
No.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, with that, we'll
12:01.
close the public hearing and we'll move on to item 3.2, which is for the Douglas County Operating and CIP budget hearing. And we'll start with a staff presentation, or did we have the staff presentation?
Commissioner, I apologize. I gave the staff presentation leading the revenue neutral rate hearing. If I may just have you open the public hearing for the budget. I do not have another presentation. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Brooke. We'll open the public hearing. Anyone like to provide public comment on this item?
Commissioner, if I may. So
Sure.
just a recognition that, there are many community partners and elected officials and department heads in this room that ask for things that they did not receive. And those are all taken under a very strong consideration and advisement and not done lightly. There are also partners in this room that did ask for something that they received. And I just appreciate, regardless of which of those camps, and some of you fall into both of them, people being present for this process.
Okay, checking online. Sarah, is anyone online for this item? Nope. All right. This one, we will close the public hearing. Comments, questions from commissioners on this item? Go ahead, Commissioner Wilson.
Like I said before, I think we went through a very thorough process in setting the budget. There are certain things I wanted to see in there that we didn't reach consensus on, and there were things that I see in there that I totally support. So it's a mixed bag, but I think overall the budget is very good.
I would just echo those sentiments, Commissioner Dorsey. That pretty much wraps up how I think a good, robust budget process should be, is that we all feel like we're overall happy with where we reached consensus, and that, we each maybe have a few disappointments in what we came into with our individual thoughts. But it's a really solid process, and I'm proud of the work that we did this summer.
I would agree. I think we all came together and we had a really good discussion. I think there were times that we may have disagreed on what we wanted to fund, but we were really able to come together and share our opinions and our viewpoints as to why we wanted to fund what we wanted to fund, what was really important to us when it came to the county as a whole, when it came to areas of fiscal health with organizations across the county, and when it came to the contingency budget, where we really saw opportunities for the county to come together as a whole and for partners to work better together and for organizations to improve fiscal health. And so as the five of us continue to work better together, I'm really proud of the work that we did together. And so I just want to say thank you.
We do have a lot of community partners here and elected officials and staff here for certain departments. And since we're passing out thank yous, a lot of you showed up and spent a lot of time on the information. That information as a commissioner is extremely helpful. also, when we ask for things, we really want them. And we continue to work with community partners to get what we're asking for. So I know sometimes it's a little difficult when we're asking for budget documents and you maybe don't quite have that document. And we thank you for continuing to working with administration to get us that, because those are all things commissioners have asked for. And so I know that that can be challenging. I also want to thank the members of the public that came to 20 hours. John, that was quite a commitment, and I appreciate it. You are probably the only one in the room who was not being paid for your time there. And while we may not agree on everything, even the 5 commissioners may not agree on everything, I want to thank you for your continued engagement with us, your way of bringing issues to us in a way that allows us to process it and think about it. And really do appreciate that and appreciate your time in all those hearings. That's really great. I will say from a commissioner standpoint, budgets, including the revenue neutral rate, are sort of it's something we agree together on. It's something we work in collaboration with. It's not a very efficient system to be looking at every single budget proposal and voting on each one individually. We don't do that at the federal level either, right? It comes as a package. And so there's a mixed bag. And I'm sure for many of the organizations who asked for supplementals and were not approved, that it's hard, that those needs are very real. You wouldn't be asking for it if it wasn't real. And I understand those people who feel like their tax burden is too high. I also, if you roll the tapes on our hearings, there were millions of dollars of requests that were turned down. And all of those requests, I think, are valid requests, but just not within what we think the burden that we can put on our local taxpayers. So thank you for that. Thank you for understanding that we probably can't do everything and that those are really tough decisions. There's no other comments. I'll make the motion to approve the adoption budget for the 2026 Douglas County Operating and Capital Improvement Budget as presented.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Any other comments? All those in favor, we don't need a roll call on this. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, on to the revenue neutral rate hearing for Consolidated Fire District number 1.
Turn it over to Brooke. If you decide to leave, please do so quietly.
Commissioners, I might just wait just a few minutes.
And thank you, everybody, for being here. I really do appreciate it.
I'm sure our fire department appreciates your support. If you're exiting, please do so quickly so we can continue our meeting and quietly. Thank you.
There's also an exit over here on this west wall. Is that west? Yes. The sun is over there.
Okay, Brooke.
Thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate the brief pause. So Commissioners, we're going to repeat the exact same types of hearings that we just conducted for the Douglas County budget and the special district budget for the cemeteries. But this is for our folks at Consolidated Fire District number 1. Commissioners, I just want to bring this map up again. We talked about it a little bit a few weeks ago on July 31st when our Deputy County Administrator Sean Peterson and Chief Mathis provided commissioners with some information about the 2026 budget and how we would utilize an additional $0.5 million in mill levy to support operations for this district. The consolidated fire number one value and levy use for the 2026 proposed budget is listed on this slide. Actually, Commissioners, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to, oops, I goofed up. I'm going to go back to this slide because there was some discussion about how many parcels were located in this district when we were having that work session. At the time, our deputy county administrator knew how many residents were in the district, but there are approximately 5,500 parcels with around 13,000 residents. So I just wanted to call that out here in looking at this map because the district area is pretty vast. So the prepared budget before you tonight was prepared using 6 mills to support $1.9 million in tax support for operations for this district. I'll remind you of the slide that we talked about where we had the proposed budget at 5.5 mills. The evening that staff came before you to ask to set the maximum levy, Commission decided at that time to increase it by 0.5 mil to support additional operations at Station 151, I think. The addition of the mill levy would support 2 additional FTEs at that fire station and provide better coverage during those shifts at that station in Lecompton. Commissioners, I just wanted to show you the 2025 fund balances and the percentages to the totals based on the beginning fund balance and the projected ending fund balance for both 2025 and then 2026. So that 2026 ending looks to be what we may have going into 2027 if everything shakes out the way it is detailed in the budget. And I also want to caveat that the values used to calculate the 2026 totals, because we don't have 2027 yet, are based on the 2026 budgeted values. So that's all staff has to go off of right now. Commissioners, that is the end of my brief presentation for this district. Staff is happy to stand for any questions that you may have about the budget before you. Again, I don't have another presentation for the second hearing, so I just wanted to get that out there. But staff is happy to answer any questions before we take public comment and open or continue the public hearing for the R&R.
Thank you, Brooke. All right, we'll open the public hearing for the rural revenue neutral rate for consolidated fire district number 1. Is there anybody who'd like to provide public comment on this item?
John M. 66049. This might be slightly off topic, but to the extent that it might involve emergency services, maybe not. I want to allude to something that Commissioner Dorsey also said. I attend both commission and city meetings, and in both the meetings, I've observed, for lack of a better word, women that are older than I am come to the commissioners and express concern about losing their house because they can't afford taxes. That's alarming to me. It's just the women, and maybe the guys have died off, I don't know. But the fact that we are challenging our elderly citizens and possibly turning them into homeless and or requiring affordable housing when they already have a house is, to me, unconscionable. That kind of situation that those folks find themselves in, and as was said, they do have their own expenses, they do have medical issues to pay for, but to the extent that our systems would produce them in that kind of stress, is something that we can be sensitive to and actually observe happening, because I don't think that they have any consequences to not paying their taxes until 3 years has gone by. So when they visit or the taxing authority becomes aware that taxes have not been paid, it's certainly something that can be inquired about, and find out if that's the reason that they're not paying their taxes. And it seems to me that we could have some kind of a conscientious response so that they don't lose their houses. And it's something I think that we should be aware of. I mean, if multiple people show up in different meetings, it probably means there's a larger population out there that haven't found the gumption to do it on their own. It's just some brave ones that have stepped forward. Thank you.
Any other public comment on this hearing? Anyone online, Sarah? No one online. All right, commissioners, any questions or motions? I'm going to ask another commissioner to make this motion since this is in districts outside of mine.
This Commissioner Reed, I move to adopt resolution number 25-32 to levy a property tax rate exceeding the revenue neutral rate for the 2026 budget for the Consolidated Fire District Number 1.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Don't we need a roll call vote?
Yep.
Okay. Commissioner Chair Patrick Kelly,
Yes.
Vice Chair Reed,
Yes.
Commissioner Willie,
Yes.
Commissioner Dorsey,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
5-0.
Thank you. We'll close the public hearing and we'll move on to the 2026 budget hearing for Consolidated Fire District Number 1. I know many of you were hoping for another presentation from Brooke Sauer, but as she said earlier, that is not happening at this time. So we'll open the public hearing and take public comment on this item. Anyone online, Sarah? Okay. We'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any questions, comments, motion?
So here's the Fire Board for CFD1, kind of recognizing that they've had a significant number of challenges to live within the 5.5 mils that was kind of the agreed upon amount for the first 5 years of consolidation. The staffing need for Station 151 in the city of Lecompton is not only a really needed protection for the city itself of Lecompton, but the whole western half of that district where we have some slower response times for our other medical response from LDCFM. So I kind of brought this forward and I fully stand behind it. I think it also is a part where it should leverage us into larger community conversations about how do we get more volunteers? How do we get more volunteers to step up and show up and invest in that district and in all of our fire districts? It's not a situation we can spend our way out of. It's still always going to be, or at least the foreseeable future, a model that includes both some paid staff and a large number of volunteers. So I know that the folks here from CFD1 kind of recognize that challenge and are working towards how they can communicate that within the area. But I wanted to do my part in just saying that we really need volunteers to step up, and it's a great gig.
Thank you, Commissioner Willie. Commissioner Willie, would you like to make a motion?
I mean, nobody else wants to talk about it? Right. I move to adopt the 2026 Consolidated Fire District Number 1 budget.
Second, and thank you, Commissioner Willie, for your leadership in this conversation.
Motion moved and seconded. Any other comments, questions?
I agree with Karen's comments.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, commissioners. That concludes our regular business agenda. Thank you all those who were able to attend this evening. We'll move on to appointments.
We're quite ready yet. I've got some information I'm going to be sending your way on some of the openings we have.
Great. Commissioners, any other appointments you'd like to make?
I have a couple in the conversation stage, but they're not ready to present yet.
Great. Thank you. We'll move on to Administrator and Commissioner Miscellaneous, and we'll start with Sarah's memo.
Thanks, Commissioners. My updated memo is in the packet online. We've got some additional dates coming up for some public events. Also, I want to note that Douglas County is donating 6 large mobile column lifts. They're hydraulic lifts from our Public Works Department that were not being used to Peasley Tech to support their truck maintenance training program. These mobile lifts are designed for servicing large trucks and they have not been used since we moved to the new shop in 2015. And so Public Works staff has contacted Peasley and they're very excited about that donation. According to our finance policy, we are allowed to make donations like this to nonprofits. And we just try to make sure commissioners know, because it's a pretty sizable value of that donation. It's approximately $15,000 to $20,000 in equipment. So excited that we could make that contribution to Peasley. And then commissioners, we do have a work session next week at 4:00 on tenant right to counsel. And so we will start next week at 4. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioners, any miscellaneous items?
Mr. Chair, I have a few. And first, I just want to say I was remiss in not giving a big shout out to Sarah and her staff and Brooke as a big part of that. And we have a very small finance staff that do a tremendous amount of work to bring this budget together with the professionalism that we cherish and value there. And most of half a year goes into creating this budget, and I just appreciate all of the work that's gone into it and all that you've done. And Jake also, it's a great crew. Thank you.
I can't expect that any commissioner would say they weren't appreciative of the work that Sarah and her team have done on that budget. It's a huge lift, and the number of meetings that happen with community partners, I don't know that and department chairs and things like that. I don't know that everyone understands, we obviously are very grateful for it. So thank you.
Do you think it's a bit like an iceberg? There's a tip above the surface and quite a bit below the surface that goes into that process.
I was thinking more like the duck with the paddling feet.
I'll take that too.
All right. Commissioners, just a little update on the conversations I've been working to have with our federal delegation. We did have our second meeting that was scheduled with Senator Moran's aide, Lucy Hallett, was canceled at the last minute for reasons that were quite understandable, but we've had several meetings of kind of the group with of Haskell students and not necessarily staff, but for they were prohibited from being in that conversation, but some of the Haskell Friends group, those have been good and productive conversations. I think kind of the mood is turning in favor of the bill that's being offered there. Still some issues to kind of work out, but I think that we've found Lucy to be really responsive to the students' concerns especially, and we hope to reschedule that one pretty soon. So positive there. Also, I've been close to despairing with Congressman Mann that nobody was going to get back with me, but that seems to not be the case. We have not an in-person, but a Zoom scheduled for soon. And I have a few community partners that, and Commissioner Kelly has offered to join that also. Small group, trying to not scare anybody off. That'll be just a Zoom conversation, but I think we're trying to work for something that's in person in October was the nearest time that was going to be offered. So that's what I've got so far.
Thank you, Commissioner Willie. Thank you for your continued work on that. Any other Commissioner miscellaneous items? Any calendar items we need to check?
No upcoming calendar items, but I just wanted to give a shout out for the exhibit, the Americans exhibit that just opened at Watkins last Friday that commissioners were invited to come to the opening of, and I believe that it's up through the end of September, maybe a little into early October, and just want to shout it out. It's a really great exhibit, and it's a privilege to have it here in our community as it's traveling. So just want to appreciate Watkins and Haskell Cultural Center and Museum for their work to bring that here for our community.
That closes October 5th.
Anything else, commissioners? All right, we are adjourned.